the ability to see beauty everywhere. I remember the day that I wrote about beauty appreciation as a quality of higher consciousness, as the highest representation of emotional health that you can have. The ability to see beauty anywhere and to source your life from its presence in virtually anything. We were in Lourdes, and in the morning we went to an English Mass where all of the people who spoke English showed up at 9 o'clock. And all of the people, my wife and all of the others that were there in Lourdes, were standing there listening to the priest from Ireland give this morning Mass in English for St. Bernadette. And it was pouring, pouring, pouring rain that morning. And by that night, during the procession, it cleared up. It was so magnificent. But that morning, and it seemed fitting, since this woman materialized this healing water, that we be in the rain. I don't know, there was something that just felt right. And everybody, all of the people kept coming over to me with umbrellas, and all of them kept telling me, oh, isn't it a shame that we have to come all the way here and stand here in the rain? And I kept thinking, it's so magnificent. Just get away from me with your umbrella behavior. Enjoy the rain. And the day that I wrote about John Keats in Wisdom of the Ages, about beauty appreciation as one of the 60 qualities of self-actualization and how to apply it in your life, I read all about his life. He was called the greatest poet of the 19th century by the Britannica. Greatest poet of the 19th century, the greatest Victorian poet. And he wrote a poem called Ode on a Grecian Urn. And in that poem he says words to this effect: when death shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain amidst others' woe. This thou, this eternal thou. And he concludes that observation with these words: beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. That's all you need to know on earth, and all there is to know. Do you know that John Keats died at the age of 25? 25? Imagine what passion he must have felt in his heart. Imagine how important it must have been for him to be detached from other people's thoughts about what he should be doing with his life. And he would sit down and write over 4,000 beautiful poems. And pass away at the age of 25, and his brother passed away at 22 or 23. Independence of the good opinion of others, detachment from outcome, appreciation of beauty, living with passion. That's emotional intelligence. It's 100,000 cycles per second. And every time you find yourself in a place where someone is attempting to bring you down into fear, into worry, into anxiety, into stress, by contaminating your energy field with their story or with their attempts to make you feel guilty, or their idea of you should really be upset because I am too, or whatever it is that you are being exposed to in your life, you have the option at that moment to just say to yourself, but what you think of me is none of my business. And I have to be in a place where I can emotionally stay strong regardless of whether or not anyone out there thinks that I should be reacting in a different way. That's 100,000 cycles per second. And you know something, after a while, it isn't something that is anxiety producing. It isn't something that people will dislike you for. As a matter of fact, people around you will begin to respect you more. Because people respect strength, not weakness. Power versus force. When you become empowered, you are respected. People will want to know more of how you're able to be that way in the face of such things. And you begin to see everything in a different light. everything. And the same bewilderment can be experienced and enjoyed and processed in the city, and in your home, and in your bedroom, and sitting on your couch, and in your car, anywhere. You can look for the beauty, you can look for all of the miracles that are around it, or you can be looking for all the things that are wrong. And again, it's if you put your attention on what's wrong, then your energy goes down. If you put your attention on the problem magnifies. If you put your attention on the solution, on what is right, and what you love, and how phenomenal this moment is, that will be your experience of life. And the great masters go through life and see everything like that. As Whitman said to me, every cubic inch of space is a miracle. You don't look for miracles. You live one.
How would we think and act in daily life if we were truly aware of our divine essence? Obviously, there wouldn't be room to reproach yourself because we wouldn't doubt our abilities. In fact, we'd never look in the mirror and feel anything but love and appreciation. We'd see ourselves as fully capable of attracting all we desire. We'd treat our body with reverence and care, giving thanks for its divine design. We'd celebrate every thought we have, knowing its divine origin, and we'd become aware of our enormous talents and be awed by all that we are. We need to encourage the awareness of our magnificence in every regard. When that awareness has been reawakened, the seedlings of inspiration will begin blossoming. Here's a way of expressing these fundamental truths offered by the writings of the Baha'i Faith. This most great, this fathomless and surging ocean is near, astonishingly near, unto you. Behold, it is closer to you than your life vein. Swift as the twinkling of an eye you can, if you but wish it, reach and partake of this imperishable favor, this God-given grace, this incorruptible gift, this most potent and unspeakably glorious bounty. There's no way to be in spirit without a changed awareness. So when we accomplish this, we give ourselves the gift of moving from being flawed, limited, lacking, and imperfect to being completely comfortable with our magnificence. This unspeakably glorious bounty is so close to us, all we have to do is make a few twinkling-of-an-eye adjustments. So why not begin right now? Here are 3 of the most obvious and important changes in awareness that you can make. 1. Changing the awareness of our magnificent talents and abilities. I want to emphasize an extremely important point. I'm not talking about self-esteem here, nor am I referring to levels of confidence. Rather, I'm saying that we need to keep the important question, who am I, in the forefront of our mind. This question doesn't revolve around previous life experiences, has nothing to do with what we've been told our special qualities or unique abilities are, and it isn't related to how worthy or worthless we feel about ourselves. It has to do with a simple truth. As Epictetus, a philosopher in the 1st century AD, said, "You carry a God about within you, poor wretch, and know nothing of it." Just like Epictetus, who was born into slavery yet became one of our most profound teachers, we came into this world with an inexhaustible supply of talent. Our abilities are as limitless as God's are, because we're a distinct portion of the essence of Him. And there's an infallible way to begin entertaining those abilities and creating as He does. That way is to become aware that anything that excites us is a clue that we have the ability to pursue it. Anything that truly intrigues us is evidence of a divine, albeit latent, talent that's signaling our awareness. Having an interest in something is the clue to a thought that's connected to our calling. That thought is a vibration of energy in this vast universe. If something really appeals to us and we feel excited but perceive ourselves as devoid of the talent we think is necessary, it's probably an even higher vibration. Anything that's causing excitement within us is evidence of a spirit message that's saying, you can do this, yes you can. If we react to this message with anything other than, you're correct, I can do this, I have the ability to do it, then we've selected the vibration of resistance and ignored the vibration of excitement and interest that spoke to us. Our thoughts, about who we are, what excites us, and what we feel called to be and do are all divinely inspired and come with whatever guidance and assistance we'll need to actualize these goals. The decision at this point is, are we willing to listen to these divine thoughts that pique our interest, or do we go on listening to the false self that's made us what Epictetus called a poor wretch? Rather than case studies of which I have only second-hand knowledge, I'm going to use some examples from my own life that illustrate listening to the false self. My background would appear to be an unlikely one for what I'm calling magnificence. Here's what it would look like on paper. Fathered by an alcoholic who abandoned his 3 children, childhood years spent in foster homes, a classic underachiever, educated in public schools, grew up at the low end of the socioeconomic scale, no financial advantages, no examples of or ambitions for higher education, 4 years as an enlisted man in the United States Navy, admitted to a university on a provisional acceptance at the age of 22 due to lower than average grades in high school, worked his way through 3 advanced degrees by being a cashier and a stock boy in a grocery store in Detroit. This isn't exactly what you'd call a prescription for becoming the best-selling author of 28 books and a successful public speaker. I couldn't begin to tell you how many teachers of creative writing and speech gave me low grades for my efforts in these fields. All I can say for certain is that I've always had a knowing about my interest in writing, have always been excited by the prospect of entertaining and informing an audience, any audience. By all of the accepted standards, I didn't have any writing ability. What I did have, and still do, was an interest and a passion for writing. It inspired and thrilled me, and I simply loved it. From the perspective of inspiration, I had the ability to do it, and that's all I needed to know. Then as now, I trusted that the universe would handle all of the details, including, will I be published? Will the critics approve? Will my book be a bestseller? Will my mother approve? Will I get an apology from any of my old English teachers? But really, who cares about any of this? The fact that writing excites me is all I've ever needed to know. When I follow that thought and stay with it, I conclude that I have the ability and the talent. And so do you. Like me, it's easy to find what excites you. What do you find intriguing? Does learning yoga and becoming an instructor interest you? Then you have your answer. The issue isn't about ability, it's about being matched up in spirit with your current thoughts and behaviors.
To change the thought from notice me, to what Lao Tzu calls living in obscurity, becoming more obscure. We live in a celebrity-obsessed world, don't we? Look at me. Notice me. The Tao teaches something completely the opposite. Listen to the 66th verse of the Tao. Water again. The sea stays low. And because the sea stays low, all of the rivers and all of the streams empty into it. Because it stays humble. Because it stays in that place of just allowing everything to come to you. He was trying to teach us the important lesson of letting what we know is coming come to us. Verse 66 of the Tao. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Humility gives it its power. That's a very important principle to understand. And I live on the ocean, right next to it. It's my front yard. And always I watch it to learn something from this thing called the ocean, which is the most powerful source of life that we have on the planet. Without it, there's no life on this planet. And because it stays low, so what does this have to say to us? Do you have the capacity to get past that ego need to always be saying, notice me, look how important I am? I mean, there's been a proliferation of this lately with this celebrity silly stuff, isn't it? I mean, CNN is doing, full hour shows on silly little things about what happened to this particular celebrity or what happened to that celebrity, and the celebrity's never even done anything. And there's all of this talk about it. And all of the new magazines I mean, and you go through an airport and you look on the newsstand and all the same photos, just with different magazines. I don't even know what the names of all of them are, but there's like this huge market now that we have for people to get into a state of notice me, notice me, notice me. And how much do we train our young people, particularly in our schools and so on, that the one who is the star is the one who gets the most attention. The one who is the most important and the most valuable is the one that has the most people liking them and so on. This constant obsession with needing to be noticed. When in fact, what I have found for myself is the happiest moments of my life are when I can do it low and slow and not have anybody out there even know what I'm doing. To be able to, I mean, Louise never would have advertised the fact of some of the things I talk about with her generosity. She does it anonymously. It's almost always done in those ways. No, look at me, look and notice me, how important I am, and so on. So much to learn from that kind of wisdom, from that kind of inner connection to the Tao, the ability and the willingness to do it anonymously, to say that you can just get done almost anything that you want to get done if you don't become obsessed with taking credit for it. In the 36th verse of the Tao Te Ching, it says, "The gentle outlast the strong. The obscure outlast the obvious." Try to become a little more obscure, a little less interfering, a little less notice me, a little less, one of the specific kinds of things that you can do is just as you're about, when somebody else is talking, just as you're about to interject what you've been thinking about for the whole time, waiting for them to stop talking, just stop and to bite your tongue and say, "Tell me more." Or, "That's very interesting. I have never heard that point of view before." Even if they totally, completely disagree with everything that you stand for, to be willing to listen, to be able to stop. Practice it. I practiced it when I did these verses of the Tao. I practiced it every single day while I was working on that. Just staying obscure. And for me, that's not always so easy because of just being recognized wherever I go. And if I saw someone who was about to recognize me, I would just put my head down. I would just walk a little bit past them like something. Right now, I just want to be anonymous. Right now, I want to be obscure. The Tao says, storms always end. Verse 23, fierce winds don't blow all morning. A downpour of rain doesn't last all day. Who does this? Heaven and earth. You're already connected to everything you want or need. It will come to you at the exact perfect time, as the rivers and the streams come to the ocean at the perfect time and place. You gotta trust. You gotta know it's going to come to you. You don't have to chase after it. You can become a little less obsessed with your ego and your self-importance and who you are and what you've done, and you can get so much more done. And you know what? It's the most peaceful and sweet, delicious way. It's like the song that Cecilia was singing about the rose. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Line by Albert Einstein when he was talking to his students about trying to solve mathematical problems and equations. He said, "You can't ever solve a problem with the same mind that created it." It's what they call sometimes in management circles thinking outside of the dots or outside of the box. Getting out of your comfort zone. Getting out of looking at things the way you've always looked at them. And having a different kind of an awareness. I came across this quote not too long ago. Moving away the clouds does not make the sunshine. It merely reveals what was hidden all along. The sunshine, the sun is always there. And you don't make it shine by just taking things away. There's something inside all of us that is hidden. And it's the ability to
I call it rewriting our agreement with reality. It requires a new kind of awareness, a willingness, if you will, to see yourself as potentially capable of virtually anything. I've always loved the observation from the New Testament of Jesus, that even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. That within each and every one of us there is this ability to be healers. There's this ability to be able to manifest and attract anything into our lives that we put our attention on. There's this ability to live at such a high level of consciousness that we can transcend our bodies. My internal wiring has always been one of whatever it is that I've got in my life as a problem, that I have to take responsibility for it, but I also have the capacity to be able to change it. And not only to change around what it is that is not working for me, but also to change around what I have been attracting into my life. I think it begins with this whole idea of being inspired. I've always liked that word, inspired, inspiration, because its origin is in spirit. And then the opposite word is being informed. And so when you're in form, in the physical world, when you're in form, you get information. You get lots of information. And this is what we call the information age. Right? So there's no shortage of information. They say that on a little chip the size of your thumbnail, we can put the names and addresses of everybody in the United States and Canada on a little chip the size of your thumbnail. That's really more information, I think, than we need. What we are doing is we are moving from the age of information to the age of inspiration, I believe. And as we move into the age of inspiration, where collectively mankind is beginning to have a collective capacity to be able to think thoughts which empower us rather than which weaken us, which, according to Hawkins' research, up until about 1985 or 1986, collectively, mankind's collective thoughts always produced that which weakens us. And now, in the last few years, we have moved above the level where man's collective consciousness is at least at a place where collectively we are empowering ourselves rather than using force. And as we move into the world of inspiration, we have to understand what that means. And Patanjali had a wonderful observation. I wrote about it in Wisdom of the Ages. He said, when you are inspired, that is, in spirit, and remember, it is in the world of spirit, it is in the world of thoughts where we change, where we go to the place where we create anything we want for ourselves in our lives. So that remembering here, the theme is that you can't solve any problem that you might have in your life with the same mind that created it. So you're moving into a place now called spirit. That which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. We're moving into the world of the invisible now. When you are inspired, and think about the moments in your life when you've had the most inspiration, inspirado. You lose any touch of fatigue. I have gone and been inspired at moments in my life when I have written for almost 24 straight hours without stopping, without eating, without thinking about sleep. I just got into one of those modes, what we call a zone sometimes, where everything just flowed. When you are in that place, you transcend everything. And you don't worry about whether people are going to call you or not call you. You don't worry about your children. You don't worry about being sick. You don't think about the cold that you might have. You don't think about being tired and how much sleep you'll need. When you're inspired, you're in spirit. When you're in spirit, you're connected to your source. And now what you're doing is you're moving out of the mindset of inform or information, which is where all problems occur in the world of the physical, and you're shifting into the world of spirit. The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish. And this is a great way to practice in parenting as well. And this idea that a rigid thought, how many times have you heard this idea that if I tell you something, I'm going to stay consistent with it? We have a set of rules, these are the rules, and we'll do it this way. In the Tao it says the more rules you make, the more rule breakers you create. It's true. The more rules you have in your house about how everything has to go. We had in our house, my wife would have a big jar of M&Ms. Peanuts, all these different multicolored ones. And the kids in our house, because we didn't feed them sugar and we didn't give them sodas and stuff like that, so they were just more like a decoration. Every once in a while someone would take them. They'd hardly ever be replaced. Now when we had kids come over to our house who weren't ever allowed to have such horrible things, you should have seen their behavior. They would scoop them up, they'd be putting them in their pockets, and they'd get their purses, and they'd open it up, and, the whole thing would be empty. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you mean you could just have these whenever you want them? I said, well, we don't really have any rules about that. It's just, it's not something that we encourage or discourage. It's just there. It's like Emerson had a wonderful line. He said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. A foolish consistency, a rigid consistency. So that there are many people who will say, if I say it on Monday, you can be absolutely certain that on Wednesday I'm going to believe the same thing, regardless of what might happen on Tuesday. Now Tuesday might have something real that you might want to be changing your mind. You might want to say, I thought that this time, but now I've seen this, and now we can shift. And you can see how this can become, and so much about the Tao is on leadership. Leadership in the family, leadership in the community, leadership geopolitically. Less rigidity, more openness, more willingness to listen and say, I changed my mind. Because a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And what I believed on Wednesday has changed because of what happened on Tuesday. Now, another important thing to say to your children, to your friends, to your lover, to your spouses, to whomever, to the people you work with, words that we're so terrified to say, but which give us a sense of living with the Tao. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up. Say it. I don't know. Doesn't hurt. Say it again. I don't know. Isn't it fearful? I mean, so many people, and it's like very freeing, because my kids ask me something, and I say, I don't know. They say, Dad, you know everything. You know everything. I say, well, I don't know that, and I'll look it up, or we'll try to find an answer to that, but I don't quite know. I know that I spent 20 years running, and I ran every day for 20 years, for 22 years, without missing a day. 8 miles. Never missed a day. That's rigid, all right? Some call that obsessive. But you brush your teeth every day, I used to say, and you don't call that obsessive. And you go to the bathroom every day, and you don't say, well, he's obsessively doing that again today. You don't do that. But anyway, what I learned is that even in the world of exercise, there are certain things that are built in to make us rigid, to make us stiff, to make us hard. And we lift, and we run, and we kick, and this is what we call working out. There's another kind of working out that is ancient. It goes back to the time of Lao Tzu and before, which is called yoga. And yoga means union. It means union with your source. And when you do yoga, you can stay in the same place. You can do the equivalent of 8 miles. When I used to run 8 miles, I had to run 4 miles that way, turn around, 4 miles back. And I'd be sweating. Now I can do yoga, and I can just stand in one place. And in 90 minutes, by being supple, by making myself stretch, by not being hard and rigid, I can get that out there, I can get that leg up, I can do these kinds of things, and 90 minutes later, it's like I'm totally sweating and I feel so different. I used to, when I would go out at night to eat or something, after running so many miles, running marathons and doing those things, I'd go to get up and it would be, okay, it's going to take a little while, because everything was so, that doesn't happen anymore, because I've given up hard. I've given up being rigid and substituted it for being supple, for being flexible, for living a life in which I don't have to always be so fierce. Listen to this verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my all-time favorites, verse number 76. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he becomes hard and stiff. All things, including the grass and the trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Stiffness is thus a companion in death. Flexibility is a companion in life. And it's not just for how you exercise, it's how you think, how you think.
And in the New Testament it says, do not be conformed to this life, but be transformed of it. An interesting notion. And what is all matter on our planet, and how is it created, other than that which was given to us by God? What is it? All matter is through form, an idea, a thought. I want to invent chalk, I want to make a microphone, I have a thought, and then I manipulate through my form and create matter. What did Jesus do? What did Buddha do? What did Sai Baba do? What did great spiritual leaders do? Do you believe in the miracles of those spiritual people? I mean, do you really believe? Christ said, all that I can do, you can do, and greater things. How many of you believe in this room that those miracles really happened, or that they're just fiction? How many believe that they really happened? I do too. I know that I can do them too. I wonder how many of you know that you are capable of miracles. Miracles. I'm not here to preach religion at all. I'm here to talk about transformation. What is materializing an object? What is changing water into wine? What is that? But a transformation. It is not using the form, going beyond it. Now, where is the place in your life where there are no boundaries? There is no limit. No limit whatsoever. The only boundaries we have are in form. And as long as you believe you are form, you're going to always have boundaries and obstacles. When a woman said to me in a church, what are the obstacles to my achieving full happiness? I said, the belief that you have to have obstacles. That's all.
The connection between thinking and creating something for yourself is really there. It isn't just some mystical kind of hocus-pocus thing that's out there, but that you can use this vibrational pattern that we call thought, which is so instantaneous. You can literally make anything happen that you want to by the power of your ability to think. You're tuning into some kind of vibrational pattern that is there for everything, and none of us can escape that. The ultimate in that is miracles, is being able to produce miracles. And that's just one simple little example of it. There are many, many other things in this higher self business, or transformation, or in this awakening process, that are only complicated and difficult because we can't see behind it. We can't see the perfect energy that is behind the form. We can't see the perfect intelligence. There's an intelligence behind form. There's an intelligence behind a fish in water and the gills and how it works. There's an intelligence behind a plant that grows in a certain kind of way. There's a life there, and in that life form, there's intelligence behind that. We miss that intelligence because we're so preoccupied with just what I can see, how I can get a hold of it, and hence the title of this program. You'll only see it when you believe it. You'll see it when you believe it. If you only believe what you see, then you are limited to just what is on the surface. And you don't even believe in the intelligence behind anything. But if you believe that you'll see it when you believe it, then when you start expecting and knowing that there's a special intelligence in the universe behind everything that has life in it, and you begin to behave as if the perfection in all life really matters, You begin to know that that is real for each one of us. Then what happens is you're looking beyond what everybody else sees. And all of a sudden you start seeing miracles happening in your life that are just astounding to you. And at one time they were just thought of as coincidences or, oh yeah, but that's weird, but you can't really make that happen. And you start to get to a point in your life where you see that you are much more than just this stuff that you can get a hold of, this form, the five senses that we have, the ability to see and to touch and to smell and this kind of thing. And you begin to know that who you are is much greater than that, much more divine than that, much bigger than that. And it's like you can't ever get a hold of a thought. You can never touch a feeling. You can't come home with a basket full of thoughts or an armload of feelings. Yet you know they're there, and you know that that's how your whole life is. Your whole life is in this realm. Then you begin to look for that special intelligence or that special love. We have so much trouble putting a label on it. And you begin to see it in all life. And you begin to then think in accepting and loving and kind ways towards everything and everyone that has life in it. And before long, you're creating out of that love, out of that special harmony that you are and that is you, you're creating new kinds of relationships and you're creating new kinds of loves and new kind of excitement in your life. And then before long, you're making things happen that you never thought could happen before. And then you start expecting miracles instead of being surprised by them. And your whole life changes.
A lot of people are looking for the how-tos. You know, how can I become a more spiritual person? Or how can I find my purpose? And they start with the way that they learn anything. Problem-solving logic. A plus B plus C plus D equals whatever it is, and you just go through the steps. It's not like that. When you consider that everything that you have done in your life has led you up until this moment that you have right now, and all of the things that you have assessed to be negative, all of the addictions perhaps that you've had, all of the problems you've had in your marriages, all the problems you've had with your children, all of the weight problems perhaps that you've had, all of the difficulties that have come your way, the financial concerns and the bankruptcies and all of the stuff that if you were to reach into your bag, you know, you could pull out this whole bag full of negative stuff. You get to a point that the Buddhists call satori, S-A-T-O-R-I. Satori. It means instant enlightenment. Instant enlightenment. And the Buddhists believe, by and large, that enlightenment is something that happens in instants. It happens in moments. It's like I've talked about at some of my other tapes about going through the gate. You know, it's like on one side of the gate is the path that is strewn with thorns, all right? And there's all of the stuff that I have just described. And then there's this gate ahead of you. And then on the other side of the gate is this garden. And there's this flowers, and it's just magnificent, and there's happiness, and there's bliss, and there's fulfillment, and there's all of this wonderful stuff on the other side. But you can't get through the gate. And then comes the moment in your life when you go through the gate. You just go through. You know, the thorns that were there don't matter anymore. The obstacles are no longer obstacles. It's just and it's like, boom, instantaneously, you are now on a different path altogether. I can tell you that for those of you who are struggling and trying to find a formula and trying to get it all into A, B, C, D, E, F, it isn't that way. First of all of the thorns and all of the obstacles that have been created in your life are there for a reason, even though that's a hard thing for us to accept. There's something to be learned from each one of those. And so instead of saying, how can I avoid these in the future, you reprocess your life in a different way and say, I created this for what reason? And I'm going through this because, and you fill in the blanks, or the lesson in this for me is, all right, instead of why is this happening to me and isn't this awful and so on. And then satori happens. And I mean, that was very revealing for me to read about this instant enlightenment, because every major change that I've made in my life, I mean, they don't seem like big changes, but the changes that I've made happened in instants. I mean, just in seconds. Now, in the physical world of changes that I have made, I can remember when I first decided that I was going to start running and exercising and get myself in shape instead of being overweight and out of shape like I had been. In an instant, in an instant. And it was a doctor at a hospital where I wasn't a patient. I was working there. I was training the staff in group therapy at North Shore Hospital on Long Island. And this doctor said one thing to me. He said, if you continue on the path that you're on, you're going to be a candidate for a heart attack in 5 years. He wasn't trying to be helpful to me. He wasn't anything. He just was making a statement. And that evening, I went out and I ran for the first time as an adult. And it's now almost 15 years later, and I haven't missed a day of running in 15 years. It was just like an instant kind of thing, and then it was like carrying through on that. And I mean, that really flies in the face of a lot of the stuff that we hear all the time about you have to have a goal, and you have to have a plan, and you have to get it all figured out, and you have to work step by step by step. I really think that enlightenment, or discovering this inner source of strength, is something that just happens in an instant whenever you're ready. So whoever you are, I mean, if you're smoking, if you're drinking excessively, if you've got addictive habits in your eating habits and so on, if you are behaving in ways with your children or with your wife or coworkers or whatever, and you think that it's just hopeless and that you can't change and that it's just too difficult to process and so on, I'm really saying to you that in an instant you can decide to radically alter your life. And it isn't like even a decision-making process. You're now ready. The same Buddhists say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.